What's going on, everybody? What's up, Mr. Matt? What's up, JB? How are you doing tonight? I hope you're doing well. How is everybody? How are we doing? Chill would be a good word for it. I reckon today was quite relaxing. I procrastinated a little bit, as we all should, every now and again. So appreciate you two being here. I think that this is kind of unprecedented. I know there's a few streamers going on right now, so hey, what's up, Brangus? Hope you're doing well, brother. It is good to see you as always. That's real quick. Hope you are doing well tonight. Thunderstorms all day, pumpkin painting, and now relaxing with some pain meds. Nice. That sounds like a fun day, JP. Pumpkin painting is always a fun way to do. I'd love to see some of your pumpkin painting. Save my time tonight to take in your stream. Oh, I appreciate that, Brangus. I truly do. Truly do. I did was able to acquire something that I'm quite happy about, and I was able to get. It says it's the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, but we'll see. We'll see exactly what's in here. But there's short stories, there's poetry, there's novels, which I don't think we're going to be touching any of the novels. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Post some pictures in the Discord. I'll put this up as always. And I was just in Jesse's stream. Jesse was streaming tonight, Pokegirl Jesse and Maddie G, and they were able to start a playthrough of Pokemon Legends ZA. And it looks really good, as much as I didn't really want to watch it because I didn't want to spoil it for myself. Yes, hope everybody is doing well tonight and ready to have a special Halloween edition of the Relax and Read series. So we are going to get into our little pause break of The Wizard of Oz, which, of course, as we get into the other holiday season, we may continue that pause so we can stick with the themes. And I certainly do want to do like a Christmas Carol and all that. But if anybody has any suggestions of things to read that kind of fit through the November theme, otherwise we will use November to make headway on our journey through Oz. And then we will change and get back into Christmas when the holidays come around. But I certainly want to read A Christmas Story. That never happens. That's one of those lucky solves where you get a skip on the last layer. Those are the kinds that you want when you're timing yourself. I was not timing myself. Although I can say that it was less than 4 minutes. But I hope everybody did have a great day today. Hey, Katrina, excellent. We just started. I'm so happy to see you guys. Hello, Leighton. Post some photos. Excellent, everybody. JB did some pumpkin painting today. And he posted some pictures in the Discord. Just going to take a second and get that loaded up so I can peek. Guess I should get this fired up too. Oh, that's sick. I love the ghosts on that pumpkin in the back of it. That looks really good, JP. Ooh, I like it. I like it. Got some spooky Halloween photos. Some awesome decoration. I'm waiting for my computer to catch up because I do believe there's more. There we go. Yeah, that's really sick. I like that. Alright. Uh, Come on. Open sesame. Open. Alright. That's that. Get back to this. There we go. Sorry, y'all. My computer was really dragging for a second. Hey, Purple Moon. It's good to see you again. Good evening. It's pretty much evening in my time too. Only one with green eye. Excellent. How's my partner? I love it too. Yeah, I love it. Uncle Brandon, it's Uncle Kev. We've been working on the garden beds for schoolwork today. I loved it. Excellent. That sounds awesome. I wish I had that kind of schoolwork too, Brangus. That would have been so fun to do in school. Okay, this is still Oz. Right. Well, I figured what we could do is we could, of course, start with a little bit of poetry, because those are always fun to start with. And then we'll work into some stories. We might just go down the list, honestly. Yep, that's what we'll do. And then we'll pick a couple of probably better known stories of Edgar Allan Poe. And then, depending on time, we can look and see if there's any other small ghost stories that we can read for tonight, keeping it all very family friendly. But it is the Halloween season, y'all, and I am certainly a lover of the holiday. Did we talk about this last night? What everybody's going to be dressing up wise, if you do dress up for Halloween or celebrate? Also, I should have probably asked this when we started, but everybody hear me okay? Sounds spooky. Yep, that's what I thought too. Excellent. Making dinner. I hope you're doing well, Alice. It's always good to see you. Yes, it is. And it's funny you say that, Brangus, because I actually downloaded that today too. I had that same thought. So yeah, maybe we'll get into the Legend of Sleepy Hollow also. Big fan of Ichabod Crane. It's a great story. Right? I've done woodwork, horticulture, and chemistry stuff for schoolwork. You are a very intelligent young man. That is incredible. I remember woodwork. We did have woodworking in like middle school. I think it was 6th through 8th grade, and chemistry in high school. Sound is good. Excellent. All right. Well, let's see here. About 11 minutes in, cube is solved. That went really, really quick. And can't say that everything that Edgar Allan Poe ever writ was in the spirit of spooky. But what we'll do is we'll, of course, set the mood here. We'll start with just one of his first poems in the list called O Tempora O Moros, or Morse. And then we will go from there, and I'll just start picking ones that sound like they could be a little bit more on the spooky side. But Edgar Allan Poe himself is certainly was a dark individual. With that being said, I should let you know this is the first time I'm reading a lot of these works, if not for but a very long time. So appreciate your patience and grace, y'all, and thank you so much for joining me on this Halloween episode as we draw closer to Halloween. Using an art this afternoon, just having a rest now. It's sunny for a change. Let's go. Sunny days are always good. And I love that. Music and art are two of my favorite things ever. All right, let's set the pace. O times, O manners, it is my opinion that you are changing sadly your dominion. I mean, the reign of manners hath long ceased, for men have none at all, or bad at least. And as for times, although this said by many, the good old times were far worse than of any. Of which sound doctrine I believe each tittle, yet still I think these words than them a little. I've been a thinkin'. Isn't that the phrase? I like your Yankee words and Yankee ways. I've been thinking whether it were best to take things seriously or all in jest. Whether with grim Heraclitus, Heraclitus of yore, to weep as he did till his eyes were sore, or rather laugh with him, that queer philosopher Democritus of Thrace, who used to toss over the page of life and grin at the dog's ears as though he'd say, "Why, who the devil cares?" This is the question which, O heaven, withdraw the luckless query from a member's claw. Instead of two sides, Job, Bob, has nearly eight, each fit to furnish forth each fit to furnish forth 4 hours' debate. What shall be done? I'll lay it on the table to take the matter up when I am more able. And in the meantime, to prevent all bother, I'll neither laugh with one nor cry with the other, nor deal in flattery or aspersions foul, but taking one by each hand, merely growl. Ah, growl, you say, my friend, and pray at what? Why, really, sir, I almost had forgot. But, damn it, sir, I deem it a disgrace that things should stare us boldly in the face, that daily strut the streets with bows and scrapes, who would be men by imitating apes. I beg your pardon, reader, for the oath the monkeys make me swear, though something loath. I'm apt to be discursive in my style, but pray be patient yet a little while. Will change me, and as politicians do, I'll mend my manners and my measures too. Of all the cities, and I've seen no few, for I've traveled, friend, as well as you. I don't remember one, upon my soul, but take it greatly, upon the whole. As members say, they like their logic taken because divided it may chance be shaken. So pat, agreeable, and vastly proper, as this for a neat frisky counter hopper. Here he may revel to his heart's content, flounce like a fish in his own element, toss back his fine curls from their forehead fair, and hop o'er counters with the vester's air, complete at night what he began a.m., and having cheated ladies danced with them. For at a ball, what fair one can escape the pretty little hand that sold her tape? Or who so cold, so callous to refuse the youth who cut the ribbon for her shoes? One of these fish, par excellent, the beau. God help me, it has been my lot to know. At least by sight, for I'm a timid man, and always keep from laughing if he can. But speak to him, he'll make you such grimace. Lord, to be grave exceeds the power of face. The hearts of all ladies are with him, their bright eyes on his Tom and Jerry brim, and dovetailed coat obtained at cost, while then those eyes won't turn on anything like men. Oop. The dovetail coat obtained at cost, while then those eyes won't turn on anything like men. His very voice is musical delight. His form, once seen, becomes a part of sight. In short, his shirt collar, his look, his tone is the beau ideal fancied for Adonis. Philosophers have often held dispute as to the seat of thought in man and brute. For that the power of thought attends the latter, my friend the beau hath made a settled matter. And spite of all dogmas current in all ages, one settled fact is better than 10 sages. For he does think, though I am oft in doubt, if I can tell exactly what about. Ah yes, his little foot and ankle trim, 'tis there a seat of reason lies in him. A wise philosopher would shake his head, he then, of course, must shake his foot instead. At me, in vengeance, shall that foot be shaken. Another proof of thought, I'm not mistaken, because to his cat's eyes I hold a glass, and let him see himself a proper ass. I think he'll take this illusion to himself, but if he won't, he shall, a stupid elf, and, lest the guessing throw the fool in fits, I close the portrait with the name of Pitts. Posthumus, 1825. Hey, Nat, how's it going? Absolutely. Took the words right out of my mouth, Brangus. Very proud. Well, that was a fun little poem. I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. Did you get the email? I didn't check the email. I ended up going so late last night. I totally spaced on it, Nat. I am so sorry. I'm sure a few of you emailed me. I saw the email, so I know I got it because I saw the notification come through. I will answer you tonight. But yes, I got it. I am so sorry. I feel ashamed now. There were many things happening after stream, and it was already like, I believe it was almost 1:30 my time by the time we got done. And shout out once more to Mr. Brangus and Mr. Raphilosophy for sponsoring those giveaways. It was certainly a fun stream, and we look forward to having fun tomorrow. It's happened, yeah. I'm sorry, Nat. That's my bad. Right, let's see. I'm going to take a look at another poem right quick. This one that I saw the name of here. Get into our Halloween theme. So many poems. I'm just doing a really quick read through to make sure that it's okay. All right, we're just going to start here. And we're going to read another poem. We're going to do 3 poems in a row. There's going to be dreams. These are very quick, so we're going to get into these. Again, these are all works by Edgar Allan Poe. I appreciate everybody being here. Show 7 of my reader ghosts in here. 9 likes so far. Smash that like button if you haven't already, y'all. I super appreciate you. This poem is called Dreams. Oh, that my young life were a lasting dream, my spirit not awakening till the beam of an eternity should bring the morrow. Yes, thou, that long dream were of hopeless sorrow. 'Twas better than the dull reality of waking life to him whose heart shall be, and hath been ever on the chilly earth a chaos of deep passion from his birth. But should it be, that dream eternally continuing, as it dreams have been to me in my young boyhood, should it thus be given? 'Twere folly still to hope for higher heaven, for I revelled when the sun was bright in the summer sky and dreamy fields of light, and left unheedingly my very heart in climes of mine, imagining apart from mine own home with beings that have been of mine own thought. What more could I have seen? 'Twas once and only once, and the wild hour from my remembrance shall not pass. Some power or spell had bound me. 'Twas the chilly wind came o'er me in the night, and left behind this image in my spirit, or the moon shone on my slumbers in her lofty noon, too coldly, or the stars. However it was, that dream was at the night's wind, let it pass. I have been happy, though but in a dream. I have been happy, and I love the theme. Dreams, and their vivid coloring of life, as in that fleeting, shadowy, misty strife of semblance with reality, which brings to the delirious eye more lovely things of paradise and love, and all our own, than young hope in his sunniest hour hath known. 1827. We're gonna move into Spirits of the Dead. Well, that went the other way, didn't it? Thy soul shall find itself alone mid dark thoughts of a grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before 3 are again, and death round thee, and their will shall then overshadow thee. Be still. For the night, though clear, shall frown, and the stars shall look not down from their high thrones in the heaven with light like hope to mortals given, but their red orbs without beam to thy weariness shall seem, as a burning in a fever which should cling to thee forever. Now our thoughts thou shalt not banish, now our visions nearer to vanish. From thy spirit shall thy pass no more, like dewdrop from the grass. The breeze, the breath of God is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy, shadowy, yet unbroken, is a symbol and a token. How it hangs upon the trees, a mystery of mysteries. Also 1827. This is fun. So long I've wanted to do this. Let's do a few more. Evening Star. 'Twas noontide of summer and midtime of night, and stars in their orbit shone pale through the light of the brighter cold moon, mid planets their slaves, herself in the heavens, her beam on the waves. I gaze awhile on her cold smile, too cold for me. There passed, as a shroud, a fleecy cloud, and I turned away to thee. Proud evening star, in thy glory afar, and dearer thy beam shall be. For joy to my heart is the proud part thou bearest in heaven at night, and more I admire thy distant fire than the colder lowly light. This one looks a little hard. Yeah, these are all done back to back to back, 1927. All seem to have the month of July. Hmm. This one is called Imitation. What's up, Ryan Tran? It's good to see you, brother. We're just reading some poems from Edgar Allan Poe. I'm going to get into some stories and maybe look at Sleepy Hollow. But we're just warming up here. Imitation. A dark, unfathomable tide of interminable pride. A mystery and a dream should my early life seem. I say that dream was fraught with the wild and waking thought of beings that have been, which my spirit hath not seen. Had I let them pass by me with the dreaming eye, sorry, had I let them pass me by with a dreaming eye, let none of earth inherit that vision on my spirit. Those thoughts I would control as a spell upon his soul, for that bright hope at last, and that light time have passed, and my worldly rest hath gone, with a sigh as it pass on. I care not though it perish, with the thought I then did cherish. Oh, that's it. That's the end. That ended abruptly. Alright. Love that one. Thank you. Appreciate that. I like that one too. Like that one too, and appreciate you being here, Purple Moon. And Mr. Gooch still hanging on. Ryan Tran coming through. All right. Getting back in the theme of Halloween. This is called The Haunted Palace. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, a radiant palace, reared its head. In the monarch thought's dominion it stood there, never seraph spread opinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious, golden, on its roof did float and flow. This, all this, was in the olden time long ago. And every gentle air that dallied in the sweet day, along the ramparts plumbed and pallid, our winged odor went away. Wanderers in the happy valley through the luminous window saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round about a throne where sitting, Haliogreen, in state his glory well befitting, the ruler of this realm was seen. And all with pearl and ruby glowing was a fair palace door, through which came flowing, 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 and sparkling evermore, a troop of echoes whose sweet duty was but to sing in voices of surpassing beauty and wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things in robes and sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never sorrow shall dawn upon him desolate. And round about his home in glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim remembered story of the old time entombed. The travelers now within that valley, through the red litten windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discontorted melody, while lie a ghastly rapid river through the pale door, a hideous throng rushed out forever and laugh, but smile no more. April 1839. I like that one. Yeah, I like that one indeed. That one was fit the theme quite well. I feel like I've read that on stream before. That was called The Haunted Palace. We are going to get into silence. There are some qualities, some incorporate things, that have a double life, which thus is made, a type of that twain 80 which springs from matter and light, evinced in solid and shade. There is twofold silence, sea and shore, body and soul. One dwells in lonely places, newly with grass overgrown, some solemn graces. Some human memories and tearful lore rendered him terrorless, his name's no more. He is the corporate silence, dread him not, no power hath he of evil in himself. But should some urgent fate, untimely lot, bring thee to meet a shadow, nameless elf, that haunteth the lone regions where hath trod no foot of man, commend thyself to God. January 1840. Lines on Joe Locke. As for Locke, he is all in my eye. May the D right soon for his soul call. He never was known to lie. In bed, that Revel roll call. John Locke was a notable name. John Locke was a greater, in short. The former was well known to fame, but the latter is well known to report. 1843. Ooh, stanzas. The Conqueror Worm. Lo, 'tis a gallant night, within the lonesome latter years, an angel throng bewinged, bedight in veils and drowned in tears, sit in the theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes, in the form of God on high, mutter and mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly. Mere puppets they, who come and go, at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings invisible woe. That motley drama, oh be sure, it shall not be forgotten, with this phantom chased for evermore that by a crowd that seized it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the selfsame spot, and much of madness and more of sin and horror the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, A blood-red thing that writhes from out the scenic solitude. It writhes with mortal pangs. The mimes become its food, and the angels sob at vermin fangs and human gore imbued. Out, out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form a curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, and the angels, all pallid and wan, uprise, unveiled, affirm that they play is a tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. 1843. Whew. Nobody's saying he didn't have maybe a screw or two loose. Man was dreaming of worms, graboid style. Anybody remember the movie Tremors? 11 likes. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you being here for the works of Edgar Allan Poe and other ghost stories. We're going to move into another topic that Poe really loved to talk about. Yes, it was a great movie. Surprisingly, and probably shouldn't have been one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. So, not saying a lot. This one's called Lenore, which might be a very familiar name in the works of Poe. I think it was somebody you knew. Terrified of it. No shot, really? I guess depending on how old you were, it could be terrifying. I can remember being scared of one scene in particular in each one of those first three movies. I didn't see any more after that, but yeah, great movie. In fact, those would be good movies to find again. Lenore. Ah, broken is the golden bowl, the spirit float of forever. Let the bell toll. A saintly soul floats on the Stygian river. And Guy de Vere, hast thou no tear? Weep now or nevermore. See, on yonder and rigid bier low lies thy love, Lenore. Come, let the burial rite be read, the funeral song be sung, an anthem for the queenliest dead that ever died so young. A dirge for her, the doubtly dead, a dirge for her, the duly dead, and that she died so young. Wretches, ye loved her for her wealth, and hated her for her pride. And when she fell in feeble health, ye blessed her that she died. How shall the ritual then be read? The requiem, how be sung? By you, by yours, the evil eye, by yours, the slanderous tongue? That did to death the innocent thing that died, and died so young? Peccavismus, but rave not thus, and let a Sabbath song go up to God, so solemnly the dead may feel so wrong. The sweet Lenore hath gone before, with hope that flew beside, leaving thee wild for the dear child that should have been thy bride. For her, the fair, the debonair, that now so lowly lies, the life upon her yellow hair, but not within her eyes, the life still there upon her hair, the death upon her eyes. Avaunt! To-night! My heart is light, no dirge will I appraise, but waft the angel on her flight with a pain of old days. Let no bell toll, lest her sweet soul amid its hollow mirth should catch the note, as it doth float up from the damned earth. To friends above, from friends below, the indignant ghost is riven from hell unto a high estate far up within the heaven. From grief and groan to the golden throne beside the King of Heaven. February 1843. Moving into a campaign song. See the white eagle soaring aloft to the sky, wakening the broad welkin with his loud battle cry. Then hear the white eagle, full daring is he, as he sails on his pinions o'er a valley and sea. Hmm, Not to sound cliche, Purple Moon, and everybody in the chat, if we didn't talk about this already, what's your favorite scary movie? While I read Dreamland. That's weird. I wrote a poem I named Dreamland, but it was renamed to Sunflowers in the Sand. But now I'm curious. I'm sure his is better. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, wherein Edlan, named Night, on a black throne reigns upright. I have reached these lands but newly from the untimely dim Thule, from the wild, weird climb of the live, sublime, out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and titan woods, from forms that no man can discover, for the dews that drip all over. Mountains toppling evermore into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging onto skies of fire. Lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead. Their still waters, still and chilly with the snows of the lolling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread their lone waters, lone and dead. Their sad waters, sad and chilly with the snows of the lolling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. By the gray woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newts encamp. By the dismal tarns and pools where dwell the ghouls, by each spot the most unholy, and each nook most melancholy. There the traveler meets aghast sheeted memories of the past, shrouded forms that start and sigh as they pass the wanderer by, white-robed forms of friends long given in agony to the earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis an Eldorado. But the traveler, traveling through it, may not, dare not, openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. So wills its king, who hath forbid the uplifting of the frigid lid, and thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where the Eladon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have wandered home but newly from this untimely dim Thule. June 1844. It would be it, even though I hate clowns or Halloween, the first one. Ready for this? I dressed for the occasion. I would say that it is very special to me as well. Tim Curry, Skarsgård was good, but I prefer the original. The book was even better. Though a little boring, it was better. But that's awesome. I love it. One of my favorite horror movies is actually Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And the bottom it actually says, "Do you want a balloon?" So, yeah, my sister got the shirt for me a few years back. Impromptu to Kate Carroll. When from your gems of thought I turn to those pure orbs, your heart to learn, I scarce know which to prize most high, the bright idea or the bright dear eye. 1845. This one just says 2F. This must really be everything he's ever written. Haven't seen that one. Definitely on my list. I mean, really, it's an 80s. It's a good, bad movie. Just keep that in mind, okay? They did wondrous things with a minimal budget and an 80s rock band. Beloved, amid the earnest woes that crowd around my earthly path, dearer path, alas, where grows not even one lonely rose. My soul at last a solace hath in dreams of thee, and therein knows an Eden of bland repose. And thus thy memory is to me like some enchanted far off isle in some tumultuous sea, some ocean throbbing far and free, with storms, but where meanwhile serenest skies continually, just o'er that one bright island smile. 1845. Now these are his journal entries. This is super cool. Nope, these are all public. Eulalie? Eulalie? Eulalie. Eulalie? 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 There's no G in it. Hmm. I dwelt alone in a world of moan, and my soul was a stagnant tide, till the fair and gentle Eulalie came my blushing bride. Till the yellow-haired young Eulalie became my smiling bride. Ah, less bright the stars of the night than the eyes of the radiant girl, and never a fake that the vapor can make with the moon tints of purple and pearl, can vie with the modest Eulalie's most unregarded curl, when compared with the bright-eyed Eulalie's most humble and careless curl. Now doubt, now pain, come never again. For her soul gives me sigh for sigh, and all day long shines bright and strong, Astarte within the sky. While ever to her dear Eulalie upturns her matron eye, while ever her young Eulalie upturns her violet eye. Eulalie, Eulalie. It seems to be a name. Epigram for Wall Street. I'll tell you a plan for gaining wealth. Better than banking, trade, or leases. Take a banknote and fold it up, and then you will find your money increases. This wonderful plan, without danger or loss, keeps your cash in your hands, where nothing can trouble it. And every time you fold it across, 'tis as plain as the light of day that you'll double it. Oh my god, I love it. Extra avocado! I hope you're doing well. It is really good to see you. That is nice. I like that. Fold it up and find your money increases. That is funny. I'm going to remember that one. Epigram for Wall Street. Oh, no shot. Well, the very next one that was in line is the Raven. What do you know? I'll get some coffee. Let me know. Should we do the Raven? Have you guys heard the Raven enough? Think it's a must, please. Okay, you got it. The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, and while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, rapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here, forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore?" Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched upon my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the continent it wore. "Thou thy crest are shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though his answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if in his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hopes that melancholy burden bore of nevermore." But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking. Nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee. Respite, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me, truly I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of thy lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Lori, what's going on, boo? Hope you're doing well. January 1845. Appreciate that, Purple Moon. I actually just put out a long form video of myself in that reading. So I am going to be doing more poetry reading just by itself. So this is a good experiment to go through and see which poems I want to share with the long form. Yeah, we were just going through the poems and we landed on the Raven just in between, so we decided to do it. Appreciate y'all being here. 14 likes already. Going on just about an hour. We'll probably go for yet another hour, maybe hour and a half. But we're going through the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. Not all of them, of course, but we're just going through poem after poem after poem and reading. And this, I'm really having a great time for my birthday stream tomorrow. So appreciate you guys being here with me. The Divine Right of Kings. The only king by right divine is Ellen King, and were she mine, I'd strive for liberty no more, but hug the glorious chains I wore. Her bosom is an ivory throne, where tyrant virtue reigns alone. No subject vice dare interfere to check the power that governs here. Oh, would she deign to rule my fate, I'd worship kings in kingly state, and hold this maxim all life long, the king, my king, can do no wrong. 1845. Poem to Francis S. Osgood. Thou wouldst be loved? Then let thy heart from its present pathway part not, being everything which now thou art, be nothing which thou art not. So with the world thy gentle ways, thy grace, thy more than beauty, shall be an endless theme of praise and love, a simple duty. 1845. Mm. Beloved physician, the pulse beats 10 and intermits. God nerve the soul, then never forgets. In calm or storm, by night or day, its steady toil, its loyalty. The pulse beats 10 and intermits. God shield the soul that never forgets. The pulse beats 10 and intermits. God guide the soul that never forgets. So tired, so weary, the soft head bows, the sweet eyes close, and the faithful heart yields to repose. 1847. Deep in the earth. Deep in earth my love is lying, and I must weep alone. That's it, 2 lines. Yeah, some of these I've never read at all. Ulalum. Ulalum. Ulalume. Ulalum. The skies, they were ashamed and sober. Sorry, let's start over. That's funny, kind of rhymed. Didn't mean to do it that time. The skies, they were ashen and sober. The leaves, they were crisp and sere. The leaves, they were withering and sere. It was night in the lonesome October of my most immortal year. It was hard by the dim lake of Auber, in the mister mid-region of Weir. It was down by the dark tarn of Auber, in the ghoul-haunted woodland of Weir. Here once, through the alley titanic, of Cyprus I roamed with my soul, of Cyprus and Psyche my soul. There were days when my heart was volcanic, as the scoriatic rivers that roll and the lavas that restlessly roll their sulphurous currents down Yanek and the ultimate climbs of the pole that groan as they roll down Mount Yanek in the realms of the Boreal Pole. Our talk had been serious and sober, and our thoughts, they were palsied and sere. Our memories were treacherous and sere, for we know not the month was October, and we marked not the night of the year. Ah, night of all nights of the year, we noted not a dim lake of Auber, though once we had journeyed down here, we remembered not the dank tarn of Auber, nor the ghoul-haunted woodlands of Weir. And now, as the night was senescent, and the star-dials pointed to morn, as the star-dials hinted of morn, at the end of our path lay liquescent, the nebulous lustre was born, out of which the miraculous crescent arose with a duplicate horn. Astarte, Bedamonded crescent distinct with the duplicate horn. And I said, she is warmer than Diane. She rolls through the ether of sighs, and revels in the region of sighs. She is seen and the tears are not dry on these cheeks where the worn never dies. And has come past stars of the lion to point us to the path of the skies, to the lethened peace of the skies. Come up, and despite of the lion to shine on us with her bright eyes, come up through the lair of lion with the love in her luminous eyes. But Psyche, uplifting her finger, said, sadly the star I mistrust, her pallor and strangely mistrust. Ah, hasten! Ah, let us not linger! Ah, fly, let us fly, for we must, in terror she spoke, letting sink her wings till they trailed in the dust. In agony sobbed, letting sink her plumes till they trailed in the dust, they sorrowfully trailed in the dust. I replied, this is nothing but dreaming. Let us on, by this tremulous light. Let us bathe in the crystalline light, its Sibyllic splendor is beaming, with hopes and its beauty tonight. See, it flickers up in the sky through the night. Ah, we safely may trust to its gleaming, and be sure it will lead us aright. We safely may trust to the gleaming that cannot but guide us aright, since it flickers up to heaven through the night. Thus I pacified Psyche and kissed her, and tempted her out of her gloom, and conquered her scruples of scruples in gloom, and we passed to the end of the vista, where we stopped by the door of a tomb, by the door of a legended tomb, and I said, "What is written, sweet sister, on the door of this legended tomb?" She replied, Ulalume, Ulalume, 'tis the vault of thy lost Ulalume, or Ulalume. Then my heart it grew ashen and sober, as the leaves they were crisped and sere, as the leaves they were withering and sere, and I cried, it was surely October on this very night of last year, and I journeyed down here, and I brought the dread burden down here, on this night of all nights in the year. Ah, what a demon has tempted me here! Well, I know now this dim lake of Auber, and this misty mid-region of Weir. Well, I know now this dank tarn of Auber, this ghoul-haunted woodland of Weir. That one was hard. And a little longer than I thought it would be, but yeah, that one was tough. To sum it up, and this is what I think he was fighting with himself. Sounded like he had a little bit of a split personality thing going on. Lines on ale. Fill with mingled cream and amber, I will drain that glass again. Such hilarious visions clamber through the chamber of my brain. Quaintest thoughts, queerest fancies come to life and fade away. What care I how time advances? I'm drinking ale today. What care I how time advances? An enigma. Seldom we find, says Solomon Dondunce, half an idea of the profoundest sonnet. Through all flimsy things we see at once as easily as through a Naples bonnet. Trash of all trash, how can a lady don it? Yet heavier far than your Petrarchan stuff. Owl, downy nonsense that the faintest puff twirls into trunk paper while you con it. And, veritably, Sol is right enough. The general trunker manatees are errant bubbles ephemeral so transparent. But this is now, you may depend upon it, stable, opaque, immortal, by the dint of dear names, what lie conceal within it. Okay, aptly named. That was absolutely an enigma. Ooh, ooh, a dream within a dream. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow, you are not wrong to deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night, or in a day, in a vision, or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them from a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? 1849. El Dorado. Gaily benight, a gallant knight, in sunshine and in shadow had journeyed long, singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow. He fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And, as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. Shadow, said he, where can it be, this land of El Dorado? Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow. Ride, boldly ride, the shade replied, if you seek for El Dorado. Hey, Mama. How you doing, Mama Ghost? It's good to see you. I'm doing well. We are doing a special Halloween episode of Relax and Read. We're going through the many works of Edgar Allan Poe. We're working through some of his poetry right now. A couple of members mentioned the Legend of Sleepy Hollow is in the public domain, so I was thinking of transitioning to that here in a second and seeing if we can see how long that is and get through some of it tonight. Annabelle Lee. A lot of classics coming up. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that lived a maiden, that a maiden lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, she was a child, in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee. With a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud by night, chilling my Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of a cloud, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of this beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise but I see with bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so all the night's tide I lay down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the side of the sea. 1849. Interesting. We read through a majority of all of Edgar Allan Poe's poetry. I don't need the works. But let's change focus here. I'll pull up the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It was written by Washington Irving. I don't think it's that long, y'all. We might be able to finish it. But for those that don't know, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, it's the story of the Headless Horseman. It's more familiarly known as. So let's dive in and see the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This is the original 1820 edition with illustrations. Found among the papers of the late Diedrich Knickerbocker. A pleasing land of drowsy head it was, of dreams that wave before the half-shut eye, and the gay castles in the sky that pass forever flushing round the summer sky. Philosophy. I hope you're doing well, fam. I tried to wait as long as I possibly could, but we just read through almost every Edgar Allan Poe poem. So when you get a chance, man, you should go back and watch it. There were some pretty good ones in there. That's good to see you, Raph. I hope you're doing well. Now we're transitioning slowly from poetry. Hey, Prince, how's it going? From his poetry, and we're actually going to start reading The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. In fact, I think we're going to finish it too, because it's only like 30 digital pages here. That was Nappy Hollow? Oh, I got you. No worries at all, man. I hope you enjoyed your nap. You were Sleepy Hollow. That's funny. 17 likes. Y'all are great. Going on 1 hour, 15 minutes. We'll see what headway we can make in this. I don't know if there's chapters, so I'll have to find good times to pause so I can catch up on the chat, but super appreciate y'all being here. Darker Bunnies, how's it going? It's going well. We were actually just about to start the actual story of the night, because all we've done is gone through all of the Edgar Allan Poe's poetry. And as I was transitioning to stories earlier, a few had mentioned Legend of Sleepy Hollow is in the public domain, so here we go. We got it, and we're going to be starting it. But it's really good to see you, Darker Bunnies. You got timing right. Got it right on down. All right. In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indent in the eastern shore of the Hudson, at the broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators the Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas when they crossed, there lies a small market town or rural port, which by some is called Greensboro, but which is more generally and properly known by the name of Tarrytown. This name was given, we are told in former days, by the good housewives of the adjacent country. From the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern on market days. Be that as it may, I do not vouch for the fact that merely advert to it, for the sake of being precise and authentic, not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there is a little valley, or rather lap of land among the high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook glides through it, with just murmur enough to lull one to repose, and the occasional whistle of the quail or tapping of a woodpecker is almost the only sound that ever breaks in upon the uniform tranquillity. I recollect that, when a stripling, my first exploit in squirrel shooting was in a grove of tall walnut trees that shade one side of the valley. I had wandered into it at noontime, when all nature is peculiarly quiet, and was startled by the roar of my own gun as it broke the Sabbath stillness around and was prolonged and reverberated by the angry echoes. If ever I should wish for a retreat, whether I might steal from the world and its distractions, and dream quietly away the remnant of the troubled life, I know of none more promising than this little valley. From the listless repose of this place and the peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers, this sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow, and its rustic lads are called the Sleepy Hollow Boys, throughout all the neighboring country. A drowsy, dreamy influence seems to hang over the land and to pervade the very atmosphere. Some say the place was bewitched by a high German doctor during the early days of the settlement. Others that an old Indian chief, the prophet or wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there before the country was discovered by Master Hendrik Hudson. Certainly it is. The place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of good people, causing them to walk in a continual reverie. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently see strange sights and hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across the valley than any other part of the country, and the nightmare, with her whole ninefold, seems to make it the favorite scene of her gambols. The dormant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region, and seems to be commander in chief of all the powers in the air, is the apparition of a figure on horseback without a head. It is said by some to be the ghost of the Haitian trooper, whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who is ever and anon seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night, as if on the wings of the wind. His haunts are not confined to the valley, but extend at times to the adjacent roads, and especially to the vicinity of a church at no distance. Indeed, certain of the most authentic historians of those parts, who have been careful in collecting and collating the floating facts concerning the specter, L.G. the body allege that the body of the trooper had been buried in the churchyard. The ghost rides forth to the scene of the battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow like a midnight blast is owing to his being belated and in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. Such is a general purport of this legendary superstition, which has furnished materials for many a wild story in that region of shadows, and the specter is known at all the country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. It is remarkable that the visionary propensity I have mentioned is not confined to the native inhabitants of the valley, but is unconsciously imbibed by everyone who resides there for a time, however wide awake they may have been before they entered that sleepy region. They are sure, in that little time, to inhale the witching influence of the air and begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams and see apparitions. I mention this peaceful spot with all possible laud, for it is in such a little retired Dutch valley as found here and there, embosomed in the great state of New York, that population, manners, and customs remain fixed, while the great torrent of migration and improvement, which is making such incessant changes in other parts of the restless country, sweeps by them unobserved. They are like those little nooks of still water which border a rapid stream, where we might see the Ström bubble riding quietly at anchor, or slowly revolving in their mimic harbor, undisturbed by the rush of the passing current, though many years have elapsed since I trod the drowsy shades of Sleepy Hollow. Yet I question whether I should not still find the same trees and the same families vegetating in this sheltered bosom. I will pause there. Kev, what's going on, brother? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well tonight, Kev. It's good to see you, brother. We were just reading through The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. In this by-place of nature, there abode, in a remote period of American history, that is to say, some 30 years since, a worthy wight of the name of Ichabod Crane, who sojourned, or as he expressed it, tarried, in Sleepy Hollow, for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was a native of Connecticut, a state which supplies the Union with pioneers for the mind as well as for the forest, and sends forth yearly its legions of frontier woodmen and country schoolmasters. The cognomen of Crane was not inapplicable to this person. He was tall but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, feet that might have served for shovels, and his whole frame most loosely hung together. His head was small and flat on top, with huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long sniped nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck to tell him which way the wind blew. To see him striding along the profile of a hill on a windy day, with his clothes bagging and fluttering about him, one might have mistaken him for the genius of famine descending upon the earth, or some scarecrow eloped from his cornfield. His schoolhouse was a low building of one large room, rudely constructed of logs, the windows partly glazed and partly patched with leaves of old copybooks. It was most ingeniously secured at vacant hours by the withe twisted in the handle of the door, and stakes set against the window shutters, so that though a thief might get in with perfect ease, he would find some embarrassment in getting out. An idea most probably borrowed by the architect, Jost van Houten, from the mystery of an eel pot. The schoolhouse stood in a rather lonely but pleasant situation, just at the foot of a woody hill, with a brook running close by and a formidable birch tree growing at one end of it. From hence a low murmur of his pupils' voices conning over their lessons might be heard in a drowsy summer's day, like the hum of a beehive, interrupted now and then by the arithrocritive voice, authoritative voice of a master in the tone of menace or command, or peradventure, uh, peradventure by the appalling sound of the birch as he urged some tardy loiterer along the flowery path of knowledge. Truth to say, he is a conscientious man, and ever bore in mind the golden maxim, spare the rod and spoil the child. Ichabod Crane's scholars certainly were not spoiled. He would not have imagined, however, that he was one of those cruel potentates of the school who joy in the smart of their subjects. On the contrary, he administered justice with discrimination rather than severity, taking the burden off the backs of the weak and laying it on those of the strong. Your puny stripling that winced at the last flourish of the rod was passed by with indulgence, but the claims of justice were satisfied by inflicting a double portion on the same little tough wrong-head, broad-skirted Dutch urchin, who skulked and welled and swelled and grew dogged and sullen beneath the birch. All this he called doing his duty by their parents. And he never inflicted a chastisement without following it by the assurance so consolatory to the smarting urchin that he would remember it and thank him for it in the longest day that he had to live. When school hours were over, he was even the companion and playmate of the larger boys, and on holiday afternoons he would convoy some of the smaller ones home, who happened to have pretty sisters or good housewives for mothers, noted for the comforts of the cupboard. Indeed, it behooved him to keep on good terms with his pupils. The revenue arting from his school was small, and would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and, though length, had a dilating powers of an anaconda. But to help out his maintenance, he was, according to country custom in those parts, boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers whose children he instructed. With these he lived successively, a week at a time, thus going the rounds of the neighborhood, with all the worldly effects tied up in a cotton handkerchief. I'm just going to take a pause here. Heck yeah, I love it. Lots of big words in this. Very well read. That all this might not be too onerous on the purses of his rustic patrons, who are apt to consider the cost of schooling a grievous burden, and schoolmasters as mere drones. He had various ways of rendering himself both useful and agreeable. He assisted the farmers occasionally in the lighter labors of their farms, helped to make hay, mended the fences, took the horses to water, drove the cows from pasture, and cut wood for the winter fire. He laid aside, too, all the dominant dignity and absolute sway in which he lorded in this little empire, the school, and became wonderfully gentle and ingratiating. He found favor in the eyes of the mothers by petting the children, particularly the youngest, and like the lion bold which and magnanimously, uh, whilom so magnanimously, the lamb did hold, he would sit with the child on one knee and rock the cradle with his foot for whole hours together. In addition to his other vocations, he was the singing master of the neighborhood, and picked up many bright shillings by instructing the young folks in psalmody. It was a matter of no little vanity to him on Sundays to take his station in front of the church gallery with a band of chosen singers, where, in his own mind, he completely carried away the palm from the parson. Certainly it is. His voice resounded far above the rest of the congregation, and there are peculiar quavers still to be heard in that church, and which may even be heard half a mile off, quite to the opposite side of the mill pond on a still Sunday morning, which are said to be legitimately descended from the nose of Ichabod Crane. Thus, by divers little makeshifts in the ingenious way, which is commonly denominated by hook and by crook, the worldly pedagogue got on tolerably enough, and was thought by all who understood nothing but the labor of hard work to have a wonderfully easy life of it. The schoolmaster is generally a man of some importance in the female circle of a rural neighborhood, being considered a kind of idle, gentlemanlike personage, of vastly superior taste and accomplishments to the rough country swains, and indeed inferior in learning only to the parsons. His appearance, therefore, is apt to occasion some little stir at the tea table of a farmhouse, and the addition of the supernumerary 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 dish of cakes or sweet meats, or peradventure the parade of silver teapot. Our man of letters, therefore, was peculiarly happy in the smiles of all the country's damsels. How he would figure among them in the churchyard between service on Sunday, gathering grapes for them in the wild vines that overrun the surrounding trees, reciting for their amusement all the epitaphs on the tombstones, or sauntering with the holy bevy of them along the banks of the adjacent mill pond, while the more bashful country bumpkins hung sheepishly back, envying his superior elegance and address. So Ichabod's a ladies' man, is what it's saying. From his half-inherent life, also, he was a kind of traveling gazette, carrying a whole budget of local gossip from house to house, so that his appearance was always greeted with satisfaction. He was, moreover, esteemed by the women as the men of great erudition, for he had read several books quite through, and was a perfect master of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft, in which, by the way, he most firmly and potently believed. He was, in fact, an odd mixture of small shrewdness and simple credulity. His appetite for the marvelous and his power of digesting it were equally extraordinary, and both had been increased by his residence in this spellbound region. No tale was too gross or monstrous for his capacious swallow. It was often his delight, after his school was dismissed on the afternoon, to stretch himself on the rich bed of clover bordering the little brook that whimpered by his schoolhouse, and there con over old Mather's dearful tales until the gathering dusk of evening made the printed page a mere mist before his eyes. Then, as he wended his way by swamp and stream and awful woodland to the farmhouse where he happened to be quartered, every sound of nature at that witching hour fluttered his excited imagination, the moan of the whippoorwill from the hillside, the boding cry of the tree-toad, the harbinger of storm, the dreary hooting of the screech owl, or the sudden rustling in the thicket of birds frightened from their roost. The fireflies, too, which sparkled most vividly in the darkest places, now and then startled him, as one of uncommon brightness would stream across his path, and if, by chance, a huge blockhead of a beetle came winging his blundering flight against him, The poor varlet, the poor varlet was ready to give up the ghost, with the idea that he was struck with the witch's token. His only resource on such occasions, either to drown thought or drive away evil spirits, was to sing psalm tunes, and the good people of Sleepy Hollow, as they sat by their doors of the evening, were often filled with awe at hearing his nasal melody, in linked sweetness long drawn out, floating from the distant hill or along the dusky road. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives, as they sat spinning by the fire, with a row of apples roasting and spluttering along the hearth, and listen to their marvelous tales of ghosts and goblins and haunted fields and haunted brooks and haunted bridges and haunted houses, and particularly of the headless horseman, or galloping Haytian of the Hollow, as they sometimes called him. He would delight himself equally by his anecdotes of witchcraft, and of the direful omens and portentous sights and sounds in the air which prevailed in the earlier times of Connecticut, and would frighten them woefully with speculations upon comets and shooting stars, and with the alarming fact that the world did absolutely turn around, and that they were half the time topsy-turvy. But if there was a pleasure in all this, while snugly cuddling in the chimney corner of the chamber that was all of the ruddy glow of the crackling wood fire, and where, of course, no spectre dared to show his face, it was dearly purchased by the terrors of his subsequent walk homeward. What fearful shapes and shadows beset his path amidst the dim and ghastly glare of the snowy night? With what wistful look did he eye every trembling ray of light streaming across the waste fields from some distant window? How often was he appalled by some shrub covered with snow, such like a sheeted spectre beset his very path? How often did he shrink with curdling awe at the sound of his own steps on the frosty crust beneath his feet, and dread to look over his shoulder lest he could behold some unclothed being trampling close behind him? And how often he was thrown into complete dismay by some rustling blast howling among the trees, and the idea that it was a galloping Haytian on one of his nightly scourings. All these, however, were mere terrors of the night, phantoms in the mind that walk in darkness. And though he had seen more spectres in his time, and been more than once beset by Satan in divers shapes, in his lonely perambulations, yet daylight put an end to all these evils, and he would have passed the pleasant life of it, in despite of the devil and all his works, if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity to mortal man than ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together, and that was a woman. Among the musical disciplines who assembled one evening in each week to receive his instructions in psalmody was Katrina Van Tassel, the daughter of the only child of a substantial Dutch farmer. She was a blooming lass of fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting, and rosy cheeked as one of her father's peaches, and universally famed, not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations. She was withal a little of her coquette, as might be perceived even in her dress, which was a mixture of ancient and modern fashions, as most suited to set off her charms. She wore the ornaments of pure yellow gold, which her great-great-grandmother had brought over from Sardam, the tempting stomacher of the olden time, and withal the provokingly short petticoat to display the prettiest foot and ankle on the country road, in the country round. Appreciate y'all. It was written in 1820, so apparently they were a little bit more well versed in wordage and syllables back then. I am doing my best. But I appreciate y'all bearing with me while I work through it. I think it makes it a little less creepy. There you go. If you can see. Woman sitting at a spinning wheel. Ichabod Crane had a soft, foolish heart toward the sex, and it was not to be wondered that at that so tempting a morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especial after he had visited her in more paternal mansion. Old Baltus von Tassel was a perfect picture of a thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer. He seldom, it is true, sent either his eyes or his thoughts beyond the boundaries of his own farm. But within those everything was snug, happy, and well-conditioned. He was satisfied with his wealth, but not proud of it, and piqued himself upon the hearty abundance rather than the style in which he lived. His stronghold was situated on the banks of the Hudson, in one of those green, sheltered, fertile nooks in which the Dutch farmers are so fond of nestling. The great elm tree spreads its broad branches over it, at the foot of which bubbled up a spring in the softest and sweetest water, in the little well formed of a barrel, and then stole sparkling away through the grass to the neighboring brook that babbled along among alders and dwarf willows. Hard by farmhouses was the vast barn, that might have served for a church, every window and crevice of which seemed busting forth with the treasures of the farm. The flail was busily resounding within it from the morning to night. Swallows and martins skimmed, twittering about the eaves, and rows of pigeons, some with one eye turned up as if watching the weather, some with their heads under their wings or buried in their bosoms, and others swelling and cooing and bowing about their dames and enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Sleek, unwieldy porkers were grunting in the repose and abundance of their pens, from whence sailed forth now and then troops of sucking pigs, as if to snuff the air, and stately squadron of snowy geese were riding in the adjoining pond, convoying whole fleets of ducks. Regiments of turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard, and guinea fowls fretting about it like ill-tempered housewives. With their peevish, discontented cry, before the barn door strutted the gallant cock, the pattern of the husband and warrior and fine gentleman, clapping his burnished wings and crowing in the pride of gladness in his heart, sometimes tearing up the earth with his feet, and then generously calling his ever-hungry family of the wives and children to enjoy rich morsels which he has discovered. The pedagogue's mouth watered as he looked upon the scrumptious promise of luxurious winter fare. In his devouring mind's eye, he pictured to himself every roasting pig running about with a pudding in his belly and an apple in his mouth. The pigeons were snugly put to bed in comfortable pie and tucked in with the coverlet of crust. The geese were swimming in their own gravy, and the ducks pairing cozily in dishes, like snug married couples, with a decent competency of onion sauce. In the porkers he saw carved out of the future sleek side of bacon and juicy relishing ham. Not a turkey, but he beheld daintily trussed up, with its gizzard under its wing, and, peradventure, a necklace of savory sausages, and even bright Chanticleer himself lay sprawling on his back in the side dish, with the uplifted claws, as if carving that quarter which his chivalrous spirit disdained to ask while living. Okay, so he likes food. As the enraptured Ichabod fancied all of this, and as he rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands and rich fields of wheat and rye and buckwheat and Indian corn, and the orchards burdened with ruddy fruit, which surrounded the warm tenement of Van Tassel, his heart yearned after the damsel who was to inherit these domains, and his imagination expanded with the idea how they might be readily turned into cash, and the money invested in immense tracts of wild land, and shingle palaces in the wilderness. Nay, his busy fancy already realized his hopes, and presented to him the blooming Katrina, with the whole family of children mounted at the top of a wagon loaded with household trumpery, with pots and kettles dangling beneath, and he beheld himself bestriding a pacing mare, with a colt at her heels, setting out for Kentucky, Tennessee, or the Lord knows where. When he entered the house, the conquest of his heart was complete, and was one of those spacious farmhouses, with high, rigid but lowly sloping roofs, built in the style handed down from the first Dutch settlers, the low projecting eaves forming a piazza, piazza along the front, capable of being closed up in bad weather. Under this were hung flails, harnesses, various utensils of husbandry, and nets for fishing in the neighboring river. Benches were built along the sides for summer use, and a great spinning wheel at one end and a churn at the other showed the various uses to which the important porch might be devoted. From its piazza and wandering Ichabod entered the hall, which formed the center of the mansion, and the place of usual residence. Here rows of resplendent pewter, ranged on a long dresser, dazzled his eyes. In one corner stood a huge bag of wool, ready to be spun. In another, a quantity of linsey woolsey, just from the loom. Ears of Indian corn and strings of dried apples and peaches hung in gay festoons along the wall, mingled with the god of red peppers. And a door left ajar gave him a peep into the best parlor, where the claw-footed chairs and dark mahogany tables shone like mirrors. Andrians, with their accompanying shovel and tongs, glistened from their covert of asparagus tops. Mock oranges and conch shells decorated the mantelpiece. Strings of various colored bird eggs were suspended above it, and great ostrich eggs was hung from the center of the room, and a corner cupboard, knowingly left open, displayed an immense treasure of old silver and well-minted china. From the moment Ichabod laid eyes upon these regions of delight, the peace of his mind was at an end, and his only study was how to gain the affections of the peerless daughter of Van Tassel. In this enterprise, however, he had more real difficulties than generally fell onto the lot of knight-errant of yore, who seldom had anything but giants, enchanters, fiery dragons, and such like easily conquered adversaries to contend with and to make his way merely through the gates of iron and brass and walls of adamant to the castle keep, where the lady of his heart was confined, all which he achieved as easily as a man would carve his way into the center of a Christmas pie. And then the lady gave him her hand as a matter of course. Ichabod, on the contrary, had to win his way to the heart of the country, coquette, beset with the labyrinth of whims and caprices which were forever presenting new difficulties and impediments. And he had to encounter the host of fearful adversaries of real flesh and blood, a numerous rustic admirers who beset every portal to her heart, keeping a watchful and angry eye upon each other, but ready to fly out of the common cause against any new competitor. Among these, the most formidable was a burly, roaring, roistering blade of the name of Abraham, or, according to the Dutch abbreviation, Brom van Brunt, the hero of the country round, which rang with his feats of strength and hardihood. He was broad-shouldered and double-jointed, with short curly black hair and a bluff but not unpleasant countenance, having a mingled air of fun and arrogance from his her her her. Why am I having tough with this? Yo, what's up, Marvel? Hey, Jessica Parker. Hope you're doing well. Herculean frame and great powers of limb, he had received a nickname of Brom Bones, by which he was universally known. He was famed for great knowledge and skill of horsemanship, being as dexterous on horseback as a Tartar. He was foremost in all races and cockfights, and, with the ascendancy which bodily strength always acquires in rustic life, was the umpire in all disputes, setting his hat on one side and giving his decisions with the air and tone that admitted of no gainsay or appeal. He was always ready for either a fight or a frolic, but had more mischief than ill will in his composition. And with all his overbearing roughness, there was a strong dash of waggish good humor at the bottom. He had 3 or 4 boon companions who regarded him as their model, and at the head of whom he scoured the country, attending every scene of feud of merriment for miles round. In cold weather he was distinguished by a fur cap surmounted with a flaunting foxtail, And when the folks at the country gathering dis, uh, described his described this well-known crest at a distance, whisking about amid the squad of hard riders, they always stood by for a squall. Sometimes his crew would be heard dashing along past the farmhouses at midnight with whoop and halloo like a troop of Don Cossacks, and the old dames, startled out of their sleep, would listen for a moment till the hurry-scurry had clattered by and then exclaim, "Hey, there goes Brom Bones and his gang." The neighbors looked upon him with a mixture of awe, admiration, and goodwill, and when any madcap prank or rustic brawl occurred in the vicinity, always shook their heads and wanted Brom Bones warranted Brom Bones was at the bottom of it. Though this rantable hero had for some time singled out the blooming Katrina for the object of his uncouth gallantries, and though his amorous toyings were something like a gentle caress and endearments of a bear, yet it was whispered that she could not altogether discourage his hopes. Certain it is, his advances were signals for rival candidates to retire who felt no inclination to cross a lion in his armors, insomuch that when his horse was seen tied to Van Tassel's paling on a Sunday night, a sure sign that his master was courting, or as it is termed, sparking, within all other suitors passed by and despairing carried the war into other quarters. Such was a formidable rival with whom Ichabod Crane had to contend, and considering all things, a stouter man than he would have shrunk from the competition, and a wiser man would have despaired. He had, however, a happy mixture of pliability and perseverance in his nature. He was in form and spirit like a supple jack, yielding, but tough. Though he bent, he never broke, and though he bowed under the slightest pressure, yet the moment it was away, jerk, he was as erect and carried his head as high as ever. To have taken the field openly against his rival would have been madness, for he is not a man to be thwarted in his armors, any more than that stormy lover Achilles. Ichabod, therefore, made his advances in a quiet and gently insinuating manner. Under cover of his character of singing master, he made frequent visits at the farmhouse. Not that he had anything to apprehend from his meddlesome interference of parents, which is so often a stumbling block in the path of lovers. Bolt Van Tassel was an easy, indulgent soul. He loved his daughter better even than his pipe, and, like a reasonable man and an excellent father, let her have her way in the everything. His notable little wife, too, had enough to do to attend her housekeeping and manage her poultry, for, as she sagely observed, ducks and geese are foolish things and must be looked after, but girls can take care of themselves. Thus, while the busy dame bustled about the house or plied her spinning wheel at one end of the piazza, honest Balt would sit smoking his evening pipe at the other, watching his achievements of the little wooden warrior who, armed with a sword in each hand, was most valiantly fighting the wind on the pinnacle of the barn. In the meantime, Ichabod would carry on his suit with the daughter by the side of the spring under the great elm, or sauntering along in the twilight, that hour so favorable to the lover's eloquence. Yo, what's up, Maddie? Hope you're doing well, Maddie G. Aw, I appreciate the raid, you too. I hope the rest of the game went well. We're actually reading The Legend of Sleepy Hollow from 1820. Jesse! And how are you, Jays? I hope you're doing well, man. I love that's excellent. Oh, you made it just in time. We haven't really done anything but the introduction of Ichabod and some background position, but yeah, it was a fun stream. I had a good time. Get some of this coffee before it's not there. I profess not to know how women's hearts are wooed and won. To me, they have always been matters of riddle and admiration. Some seem to have but one vulnerable point, a door of access, while others have 1,000 avenues and may be captured in 1,000 different ways. It is a great triumph of skill to gain the former, but still greater proof of generalship to maintain possession of the latter, for man must battle for his fortress at every door and window. He who wins 1,000 common hearts is therefore entitled to some renown. But he who keeps undisputed sway over the heart of the coquette is indeed a hero. Certain it is, this was not the case with the redoubtable Brom Bones, and from the moment Ichabod Crane made his advances, and interest of the former evidently declined. His horse was no longer seen tied to the palings on Sunday night, and the deadly feud gradually arose between him and the preceptor of Sleepy Hollow. Brom, who had a degree of rough chivalry in his nature, would fain have carried the matters to open warfare, and have settled their pretensions to the lady according to the mode of those most concise and simple reasoners, the knights errant of yore, by single combat. But Ichabod was too conscious of the superior might of his adversary to enter the list against him. He had overheard a boast of Bones that he would double the schoolmaster up and lay him on a shelf of his own schoolhouse, and he was too wary to give him the opportunity. There was something extremely provoking in his obstinately pacific system. It left Brom no alternative but to draw upon the feuds of rustic waggery in his disposition, and to play off boorish practical jokes upon his rival. Ichabod became the object of whimsical prosecution to Bones and his gang of rough riders. They hurried to Hithero, peaceful domains, smoked out a singing school by stomping up the chimney, broke into the schoolhouse at night, in spite of his formidable fastenings of withe and window stakes, and turned everything topsy-turvy, so that the poor schoolmaster begun to think all the witches in the country held their meetings there. But what was still more annoying, Brom took all the opportunities of terming him into ridicule in presence of his mistress, and had a scoundrel dog whom he taught to whine in the most ludicrous manner, and introduced his as a rival of Ichabod's to instruct her in psalmody. What's up, Hungry Hollow? No worries at all, Marvel. Genghis, how you doing? Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't miss it, Jesse. Nice. Your Jays won a game today. That's great. I love it. Excellent. Let's go. Let's go. Congratulations, Marvel. That's awesome. Ooh, what's for dinner? We're just reading through The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. In this way, matters went on for some time without producing any material effect on the relative situations of the contending powers. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in pensive mood, sat enthroned in a lofty stool from whence he usually watched all the concerns of his little literary realm. In his hands he swayed a ferule, that sceptre of despotic power. The birch of justice reposed on 3 nails behind the throne, a constant terror to evildoers, while on the desk before him might be seen sundry contraband articles and prohibited weapons deducted upon the persons of idle urchins, such as half-munched apples, pop-guns, whirligigs, fly-cages, and whole legions of rampant little papered gamecocks. Apparently, there had been some appalling act of justice recently inflicted, for his scholars are all busily intent upon their books, or slyly whispering behind them, with one eye kept upon the master. And the kind of buzzing stillness resigned through the schoolroom. It was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a negro in tow-cloth jacket and trousers and round-crowned fragment of a hat, like the cap of a Mercury, mounted on the back of a ragged, wild, half-broken colt, which he managed with a rope by way of halter. He came clattering up to the school door with an invitation to Ichabod to attend a merry-making or quilting frolic, to be held this evening at Mynheer Van Tassel's, and having delivered his message with that air of importance, that effort in fine language, which the boy is apt to display on petty embassis of the kind, he dashed over the brook, and was seen scampering away up the hollow, full of importance and hurrying of his mission. All was now bustle and hubbub. In the late quiet schoolroom, the scholars were hurried through their lessons without stopping at trifles. Those who were nimble skipped over half the impunity, and those who were tardy had the smart application now that went in the rear to quicken their speed or to help them over the tall word. Books were flung aside without being put away on shelves, inkstands were overturned, benches thrown down, and the whole school was turned loose an hour before the usual time, busting forth like the legion of young imps, yelping and racketing about the green in joy for their early emancipation. The gallant Ichabod now spent at least an extra half hour on his toilet, brushing and furbishing up his best, and indeed only suit of rusty black, on arranging his locks by the bit of broken looking glass that hung up by the schoolhouse, that he might make his appearance before his mistress in the true style of a cavalier. He borrowed a horse from the farmer from which he was domiciled, a choleric old Dutchman of the name of Hans Van Ripper, and thus gallantly mounted, issued forth like the knight errant in the quest of adventure. But but it is meet I should, in the true spirit of romantic story, give some account of the looks and equipments of my hero and his steed. The animal he bestrode was a broken-down plough-horse. It had outlived almost everything but its viciousness. He was gaunt and shagged, with a ewe neck, and a head like a hammer. His rusty mane and tail were tangled and knotted with burrs. One eye had lost its pupil, and was glaring and spectral, but the other had a gleam of genuine devil inside of it. Still, he must have had fire and metal in his day, if we may judge from the name he bore of gunpowder. He had, in fact, been a favorite steed of his master, the choleric Van Ripper, who was a furious rider, and had infused very probably some of his own spirit into the animal. For, old and broken down as he looked, there was more of the lurking devil inside him than any young filly in the country. Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. He rode with short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to the pommel of the saddle. His eyes, his sharp elbows struck out like grasshoppers. He carried his whip perpendicularly, and his hand like a scepter, and as his horse jogged on, the motion of his arms was not unlike the flapping of a pair of wings. A small wool hat rested on top of his nose, for so his scanty strip of forehead might be called. That's funny. And the shirts of his black coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Such was an appearance of Ichabod and his steed that they shambled out of the gate of Hans Van Ripper, and it was altogether such an apparition as it's seldom to be met with in broad daylight. I don't know why this is so hard. Because it was written in 1820. It was, as I have said, a fine autumnal day. The sky was clear and serene, and nature wore that rich and golden livery which we always associate with the idea of abundance. The forests had put on their sober brown and yellow, while some trees of the tenderer kind had been nipped by the frosts into brilliant dyes of orange, purple, and scarlet. Streaming files of wild duck began to make their appearance high in the air. The bark of the squirrel might be heard from the groves of beech and hickory nuts, and the pensive whistle of the quail at intervals from the neighboring stubble field. The small birds were taking their farewell banquets in the fullness of their revelry. They fluttered, chirping and frolicking from bush to bush and tree to tree, capricious from the very profusion and variety about them. There was a honest cock ribbon, the favorite game of the stippling sportsman with its loud, querulous note, and the twittering blackbirds flying in sable clouds, and the golden-winged woodpecker with his crimson chest, his broad black gorget, and splendid plumage, and the cedar bird with its red-tipped wings and yellow-tipped tail, and his little Monterio of cap of feathers, and the blue jay, that noisily coxcomb in the gay light blue coat, and the white underclaw screaming and chattering, nodding and bobbing and bowing, and pretending to be on good terms with every songster of the grove. As Ichabod jogged down slowly on his way, his eye, ever open to every symptom of culinary abundance, ranged with delight over the treasures of jolly autumn. On all sides he beheld vast stores of apples, some hanging in oppressive opulence on the trees, some gathered into baskets and barrels for the market, others heaped up into rich piles for the cider press. Farther on he beheld great fields of Indian corn, with its golden ears peeping from their leafy coverts, and holding out the promise of cakes and hasty pudding, and the yellow pumpkins lying beneath them, turning up their fair round bellies to the sun, and giving ample prospects of the most luxurious of pies, and anon he passed the fragrant buckwheat fields breathing the odor of the beehive, and as he beheld them, soft anticipation stole over his mind of dainty slapjacks, well buttered, and garnished with honey or treacle, by the delicate little dimpled hand of Katrina Van Tassel. Sounds very spooky. Yeah, it can be very spooky. It's about to get really spooky. I just have that feeling that our friend the horseman's going to show up. This is a very different book because nobody's talking to one another. It's a story of events of what happened. So that's kind of unique. Thus, feeding his mind with many sweet thoughts and sugared suppositions, he journeyed along the sides of the range of hills which looked out upon some of the goodliest scenes of the mighty Hudson. The sun gradually wheeled its broad disk down in the west. The wide bosom of the Tappan Zee lay motionless and glassy, excepting that here and there the gentle undulation waved and prolonged the blue shadow of the distant mountain. A few amber clouds floated in the sky without the breath of air to move them. The horizon was of a fine golden tint, changing gradually into a pure apple green, and from that into a deep blue of the mid-heaven. A slanting ray lingered on the woody crest of the precipices that overhung some of the parts of the river, giving greater depth to the dark gray and purple of their rocky sides. A slope was loitering in the distance, dropping slowly down with their tide, her sail hanging uselessly against the mast, and as the reflection of the sky gleamed along the still water, it seemed as if the vessel was suspended in the air. It was toward the evening that Ichabod arrived at the castle of Heer Van Tassel, which he found thronged with the pride and flower of the adjacent country. Old farmers and spare leathern-faced race of homespun coats and breeches, blue stockings, hung shoes, and magnificent pewter buckles. Their brisk, withered little dames in close-crimped caps, long-waisted short gowns, homespun petticoats with scissors and pin-cushions and gay calico pockets hanging on the outside, buxom lasses almost as antiquated as their mothers, excepting wear a straw hat, a fine ribbon, or perhaps a white frock, gave symptoms of city innovation. I think the dog is sleeping. The sons in short square skirted coats with round of stupendous brass buttons, and their hair generally queued in the fashion of the times, especially if they could procure an eel skin for the purpose, it being esteemed throughout the country as their potent nourisher, strengthener of the hair. Brom Bones, however, was the hero of the scene, having come to the gathering on his favorite steed, Daredevil, a creature like himself full of mettle and mischief, and which no one but himself could manage. He was, in fact, noted for preferring vicious animals, given to all kinds of tricks, which kept the rider in constant risk of his neck, for he held a tractable, well-broken horse as unworthy of a lad as a spirit. Unworthy of a lad of spirit. Bless it. Fain would I pause to dwell upon the world of charms that bust upon the enraptured gaze of my hero, as he entered the state parlor of Van Tassel's mansion, not those of the bevy of buxom lasses with their luxurious display of red and white, but the ample charm of genuine Dutch country tea table, in the sumptuous time of autumn, such heaped up platters of cakes and various and almost indescribable kinds, known to the experienced Dutch housewives. There was a doughy donut, a tender oily koek, and a crisp and crumbling cruller, sweet cakes and short cakes, ginger cakes and honey cakes, and the whole family of cakes. And then there were apple pies and peach pies and pumpkin pies, besides slices of hams and smoked beef, and moreover delectable dishes of preserved plums and peaches and pears and quinces, not to mention broiled shad and roasted chickens, together with bowls of milk and cream, all mingled higgledy-piggledy, higgledy-piggledy, pretty much as I have enumerated them, with their motherly teapot standing up at its clouds of vapor from the midst. Heaven bless the mark, I want breath and time to discuss this banquet as it deserves, and I am too eager to get on with my story. Happily, Ichabod Crane was not in so great a hurry as his historian, but did ample justice to every dainty. Getting hungry now, right? Mrs. 5150, hello. I hope you're doing well. 22 likes. I appreciate you. Getting hungry now, right? He was a kind and thankful creature, whose heart dilated in proportion to his skin, was filled with good cheer, and whose spirits rose with eating as some men's do with drink. He could not help, too, rolling his large eyes around him as he ate, and chuckling with the possibility that he might one day be lord of all this scene and almost unimaginably luxury and splendor. Then, he thought, how soon he'd turn his back upon the old schoolhouse, snap his fingers in the face of Hans von Ripper uh, and every other patron, and kick any impertinently pedagogue out of the doors that should dare to call him comrade. Old Baltus Van Tassel moved about among his guests with the face dilated with content and good humor, round and jolly as the harvest moon. His hospitable attentions were brief but expressive, being confined to a shake of the hand, a slap on the shoulder, a loud laugh, and a pressing invitation to fall to and help themselves. And now the sound of the music from the common room or hall summoned to the dance. The musician was an old gray-headed man who had been the itinerant orchestra of the neighborhood for more than half a century. His instrument was as old and battered as himself, and the greater part of the time he scraped on two or three strings, accompanying every movement of the bow with the motion of the head, bowing almost to the ground and stamping with his foot whenever a fresh couple were to start. Ichabod prided himself upon the dancing as much as upon his vocal powers. Not a limb, not a fiber about him was idle, and to have seen his loosely hung frame in full motion and clattering about the room, you would have thought St. Vitrus himself, that blessed patron of the dance, was figuring before you in person. He had the admiration of all the goers who, having gathered of all ages and sizes from the farm in the neighborhood, stood forming a pyramid of shining faces at every door and window, gazing at the delight at the scene, rolling their white eyeballs and showing grinning rows of ivory from ear to ear. How could the flogger of urchins be otherwise than the mated and joyous? The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance, and smiling graciously in reply to all the amorous oglings, while Brom Bones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding by himself in one corner. When the dance was at an end, Ichabod was attracted to a knot of the sager folks, who, with an old Van Tassel, sat smoking at one end of the piazza, gossiping over the former times and drawing out long stories about the war. This neighborhood, at the time of which I am speaking, was one of the highly favored places which abound with chronicle and great men. The British and American line had run near it during the war, and had therefore been the scene of marauding and infested with refugees, cowboys, and all kinds of broader chivalry. Just sufficient time had elapsed to enable each storyteller to dress up his tale with a little becoming fiction, and in the indistinctness of his recollection to make himself the hero of every exploit. There was a story of Diffoom Marteling, a large blue-bearded Dutchman who had nearly taken a British frigate with an old iron 9-pounder from a mud breastwork, only that his gun burst at the sixth discharge, and there was an old gentleman who shall be nameless, being too rich a Mahir to be lightly mentioned, who in the Battle of White Plains, being an excellent master of defense, parried a musket ball with a small sword, insomuch that he absolutely felt the whiz around the blade glance off it at the hilt, in proof of which he was ready at any time to show the sword. With the hilt a little bent, there were several more that had been equally great in the field, not one of whom but was persuaded that he had a considerable hand at bringing the war to a happy termination. But all these were nothing to the tales of ghosts and apparitions that succeeded. The neighborhood is rich in legendary treasures of the kind. Local tales and superstitions thrive best in these sheltered, long-settled retreats, but are trampled underfoot by the shifting throng that forms the population of most of our country places. Besides, there is no encouragement for ghosts in most of our villages, for they have scarcely had time to finish their first nap and turn themselves into their graves before their surviving friends have traveled away from the neighborhood, so that when they turn out at night to walk their rounds, they have no acquaintances left to call upon. This is perhaps the reason why we so seldom hear of ghosts except in our long established Dutch communities. The immediate cause, however, of the prevalence of supernatural stories in these parts was doubtless owing to the vicinity of Sleepy Hollow. There was a conti- there was a contagion in this very air that blew from that haunted region. It breathed forth the atmosphere of dreams and fancies, infecting all the land. Several of the Sleepy Hollow people were present at the Van Tassels, and, as usual, were doiling about their wild and wonderful legends. Many dismal tales were told about funeral trains and mourning cries and wailings heard and seen about the great tree where the unfortunate Major Andre was taken, and which stood in the neighborhood. Some mention was made also of the woman in white that haunted the dark glen at Raven Rock, and was often heard to shriek on winter nights before a storm, having perished there in the snow. The chief part of the stories, however, turned upon the favorite spectre of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, who had been heard several times of late, patrolling the country, and, it was said, tethered his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard. The sequestered situation of this church seemed always to have made it a favorable haunt of troubled spirits. It stands on a knoll, surrounded by locust trees and lofty elms, from among which its decent, whitewashed walls shine modestly forth, like Christian purity beaming through the shades of retirement. A gentle slope descends from it in the silver sheet of water bordered by high trees, between which peeps may be caught at the blue hills of the Hudson. To look upon its grass-grown yard, where the sunbeams seem to sleep so quietly, one would think that there was at least the dead might rest in peace. Think that there at least the dead might rest in peace. On one side of the church extends a wide, woody dell, along which raves a large brook among broken rocks and trunks of fallen trees. Over a deep black part of the stream, not far from the church, was formerly thrown a wooden bridge. A road that led to it and the bridge itself were thickly shaded by overhanging trees, which cast a gloom about it, even in the daytime, but occasioned a fearful darkness at night. Such was one of the favorite haunts of the Headless Horseman, and the place where he was most frequently encountered. The tale was told of old Brower, a most uh, heretical disbeliever in ghosts. How he met the horseman returning from his foray into Sleepy Hollow, and was obliged to get up behind him. How they galloped over brush and brake, over hill and swamp, until they reached the bridge, when the horseman suddenly turned into a skeleton, threw old Brower into the brook, and sprang away over the treetops with a clap of thunder. The story was immediately matched by a thrice of marvelous adventure Brom Bones, who made light of the galloping Haytian with the errant jockey, as an errant jockey. He affirmed that on returning one night from the neighboring village of Sing Sing, he had been overtaken by this midnight trooper, that he had offered to race with him for a bowl of punch, and should he won it too, for Daredevil beat the goblin horse All Hollow. But just as he came to the church bridge, the Haytian bolted and vanished in a flash of fire. All these tales told in that drowsy undertone with which men talk in the dark, and countenances of the listener only now and then receiving a casual gleam from their glare of a pipe, sank deep in the mind of Ichabod. He repaid them in kind with large extracts from his invaluable author, Cotton Mather, and added many marvelous events that had taken place in his native state of Connecticut, and fearful sights which he had seen in this nightly walks about Sleepy Hollow. The revel now gradually broke up. The old farmers gathered together in families in their wagons, and they were heard for some time rattling along the hollow roads and over the distant hills. Some of the damsels mounted on pylons to be pylons behind their favorite swains, and their light-hearted laughter, mingling with the clatter of hooves, echoed along the silent woodlands, sounding fainter and fainter until they gradually died away. And the late scene of noise and frolic was all silent and deserted. Ichabod only lingered behind, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, fully convinced that he was now on the high road to success. What passed at this interview I will not pretend to say, for in fact I do not know. Something, however, I fear me, must have gone wrong, for he certainly sallied forth, after no very great interval, with an air quite desolate and chapfallen. Oh, these women! These women! Could that girl have been playing off any of their coquettish tricks? Was her encouragement of the poor pedagogue all a mere sham to secure her conquest of his rival? Heaven only knows, not I. Let it suffice to say, Ichabod stole forth with the air of one who had been sacking a hen roost rather than a fair lady's heart, without looking to the right or left to notice the scene of rural wealth on which he had so often gloated. He went straight to the stable, and with several hearty cuffs and kicks roused his steed most uncourteously from his comfortable quarters, in which he was soundly sleeping, dreaming of mountains of corn and oats and whole valleys of timothy and clover. It was the very witching time of the night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homeward, along the sides of the lofty hills which rise above Tarrytown, and which he had traversed so cheerily in the afternoon. The hour was as dismal as himself. Far below him the Tappan Zee spread its dusky and distant waste of waters, with here and there the tallest masts of a slope, riding quietly at anchor under the land. In the dead hush of midnight he could even hear the barking of the watchdog from the opposite shore of the Hudson, but it was so vague and faint as only to give an idea of distance from this faithful companion of man. Now and then, too, a long-drawn crowing of a cock, accidentally awakened, would sound far, far off from the farmhouse, away among the hills. But it was like a dreaming sound in his ear. No signs of life occurred near him, but occasionally a melancholy chirp of a cricket, or perhaps a guttural twang of a bullfrog from a neighboring marsh, as if sleeping uncomfortably and turning suddenly in his bed. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had heard that afternoon now came crowding upon his recollection. The night grew darker and darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky, and driving clouds occasionally hid them from his sight. He had never felt so lonely and dismal. He was, moreover, approaching the very place where many of the scenes of the ghost stories had been laid. In the center of the road stood an enormous tulip tree, which towered like a giant above all the other trees of the neighborhood, and formed a kind of landmark. Its limbs were gnarled and fantastic, large enough to form trunks for ordinary trees, twisting down almost to the earth, and rising again into the air. It was connected with a tragical story of the unfortunate Andre who had been taken prisoner hard by, and was universally known by the name of Major Andre's tree. A common people regarded it with a mixture of respect and superstition, partly out of sympathy for the fate of its ill-starred namesake, and partly from the tales of strange sights and doleful lamentations told concerning it. As Ichabod approached this fearful tree, he began to whistle. He thought his whistle was answered. It was but a blast sweeping sharply through the dry branches. As he approached a little nearer, he thought he saw something white hanging in the midst of the tree. He paused and ceased whistling, but on looking more narrowly, perceived that it was a place where the tree had been scratched by lightning, and the white wood lay bare. Suddenly he heard a groan, his teeth chattered, and his knees smote against the saddle. It was but the rubbing of one huge bough upon another. As they were swaying about by the breeze, he passed the tree in safety, but new perils lay before him. About 200 yards from the tree, a small brook crossed the road and ran into a marshy, thickly wooded glen known by the name of Wiley Swamp. A few rough logs lay side by side, served for a bridge over the stream. On that side of the road where the brook entered the wood, a group of oaks and chestnuts matted thick with wild grapevines threw a cavernous gloom over it. To pass this bridge was the Severus Trial. It was at this identical spot that the unfortunate Andre was captured, and under the covert of those chestnuts and vines were the sturdy yeomen concealed who surprised him. This has ever since been considered a haunt stream. Fearful are the feelings of the schoolboy who has to pass it alone in the dark. As he approached the stream, his heart began to thump. He summoned up, however, all his resolution. He gave his horse half a score of kicks in the ribs and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. But instead of starting forward, the perverse old animal made a lateral movement and ran broadside against the fence. Ichabod, whose fears increased with the delay, jerked the reins on the other side and kicked lustily with the contrary foot. It was all in vain. His steed started, it is true, but it was only to plunge into the opposite side of the road, into the thicket of brambles and alder bushes. The schoolmaster now bestowed both whip and heel upon those starveling ribs of the old gunpowder, who dashed forward, snuffling and snorting, but came to stand just by the bridge, with the suddenness that had nearly sent his rider sprawling over his head. Just at this moment, a flashy tramp by the side of the bridge caught the sensitive ear of Ichabod. In the dark shadow of the grove on the margin of the brook, he beheld something huge, misshapen and towering. It stirred not, but it seemed gathered up in the gloom, like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. The hair of the frightened pedagogue rose upon his head with terror. What was to be done? To turn and fly now was too late, and besides, what chance was there of escaping this ghost or goblin, if such a thing was, which could ride upon the wings of the wind? Summoning up, therefore, a show of courage, he demanded the stammering accents, "Who are you?" He received no reply. He repeated his demand in still more agitated voice. Still there was no answer. Once more he cudgeled at the sides of his inflexible gunpowder, and, stuttering his eyes, broke forth with involuntary fervor into a psalm tune. Just then the shadowy object of alarm put himself in motion, and with a scramble and a bound stood at once in the middle of the road. Though the night was dark and dismal, yet the form of the unknown might now in some degree be ascertained. He appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, and mounted on a black horse of powerful frame. He made no offer of molestation or sociability, but kept aloof on one side of the road, jogging along on the blind side of old Gunpowder, who had now got over his fright and waywardness. Ichabod, who had no relish for the strange midnight companion, and bethought himself of the adventure of Brom Bones with the galloping Haytian, now quickened his steed in hopes of leaving him behind. The stranger, however, quickened his horse to an equal pace. Ichabod pulled up and fell into a walk, thinking to lag behind. The other did the same. His heart began to sink within him. He endeavored to resume his psalm's tune, but his parched tongue clove to the roof of his mouth, and he could not utter a stave. There is something in the moody and dogged silence of this pertinacious companion that was mysterious and appalling. It was soon fearfully accounted for. On mounting in a rising ground, which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in a cloak, Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless. But his horror was still more increased on observing that the head, which should have rested on his shoulders, was carried before him on the pommel of his saddle. His terror rose to desperation. He rained a shower of kicks and blows upon Gunpowder, hoping by a sudden movement to give his companion the slip, and the spectre started full jump with him. Away, then, they dashed, through the thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. Ichabod's flimsy garments fluttering in the air as he stretched his long, lanky body away over his horse's head in the eagerness of his flight. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Mama, happy birthday, my favorite person. I love you so. Aw, I appreciate that, Mama. I appreciate that. Name of the book, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. What's up, Ancient Mew? It's good to see you. I appreciate that, Mama. I appreciate that, Bri, Spencer, Darker Bunnies, all my Ghost fam. I appreciate you being here and celebrating. I guess on the East Coast it is my birthday, huh? Or as we more commonly know it, the story of the Headless Horseman. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Here we go. Last stretch. Got 11 minutes left in the story. They had now reached the road, which turns off to Sleepy Hollow. But Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with a demon, instead of keeping up, it made an opposite turn and plunged headlong downhill to the left. This road leads through a sandy hollow shaded by trees for a quarter of a mile, where it crosses a bridge famous in goblin story, and just beyond swells the green knoll in which stands the whitewashed church. As yet, the panic of the steed had given his unskilful rider an apparent advantage in the chase, but just as he had gotten halfway through the hollow, the girths of the saddle gave way, and he felt it slipping from under him. He seized it by the pommel and endeavored to hold it firm, but in vain, and he had just time to save himself by clasping old Gunpowder round the neck when the saddle fell to the earth and he heard it trampled underfoot by his pursuer. For a moment the terror of Hans von Ripper's wrath passed across his mind, for it was his Sunday saddle. But this was no time for petty fears. The goblin was hard on his haunches, and, unskilful rider as he was, he had much ado to maintain his seat, sometimes slipping on one side, sometimes on another, and sometimes jolted on the high ridge of his horse's backbone with a violence that he verily feared would cleave him asunder. An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hopes that the church bridge was at hand. The wavering reflection of the silver star in the bosom of the brook told him that he was not mistaken. He saw the walls of the church dimly glaring under the trees beyond. He recollected the place where Brom Bones' ghostly competitor had disappeared. If I can but reach that bridge, thought Ichabod, I am safe. Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him. He even fancied that he felt his hot breath. Another convulsive kick in the ribs, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge. He thundered over the resounding planks. He gained the opposite side, and now Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuers should vanish. According to the rule, in a flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising on his stirrups, and in the very act of hurling his head at him, Ichabod endeavored to dodge the horrible missile, but too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He tumbled headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning the old horse was found without his saddle and with the bridle under his feet, soberly cropping the grass at his master's gate. Ichabod did not make his appearance at breakfast. Dinner hour came, but no Ichabod. The boys assembled at the schoolhouse and strolled idly about the banks of the brook, but no schoolmaster. Hans von Ripper now began to feel some uneasiness about the fate of poor Ichabod and his saddle. An inquiry was set on foot, and after diligent investigation they came upon his traces. In one part of the road leading to the church was found the saddle trampled in the dirt, the tracks of horses' hoofs deeply dented in the road, and evidently at furious speed, were traced to the bridge, beyond which, on the bank of the broad part of the brook, where the water ran deep and black, was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside it a shattered pumpkin. The brook was searched, but the body of the schoolmaster was not to be discovered. Hans von Ripper, as executor of his estate, examined the bundle which contained all of his worldly effects. They consisted of 2 shirts and a half, 2 socks for the neck, a pair or 2 of worsened stockings, an old pair of corduroy small clothes, a rusty razor, a book of psalm tunes full of dog ears, and a broken pitch pipe. As to the books and furniture of the schoolhouse, they belonged to the community, excepting Cotton Mather's History of Witchcraft, a New England almanac, and a book of dreams and fortune-telling, in which last was a sheet of foolscap, much scribbled and blotted in several fruitless attempts to make a copy of verses in honor of the heiress of Von Tassel. These magic books and the poetic scrawl were forthwith consigned to the flames by Hans von Ripper, who, from that time forward, determined to send his children no more to school, observing that he never knew any good come of this same reading and writing. Whatever money the schoolmaster possessed, and he had received his quarter's pay but a day or 2 before, he must have had about his persons at the time of his disappearance. The mysterious event caused much speculation at the church. On the following Sunday, knots and gazers of gossips were collected in the churchyard, at the bridge, and at the spot where the hat and the pumpkin had been found. The stories of Brower, of Bones, and of the budget of others were called to mind, and when they had diligently considered them all, they compared them with the symptoms of the present case. They shook their heads and came to the conclusion that Ichabod had been carried off by the galloping Haytian. As he was the bachelor and in nobody's debt, nobody troubled his head any more about him. The school was removed to a different quarter of the hollow, and another pedagogue reigned in his stead. It is true, an old farmer who had been down to New York on a visit several years after, and from whom this account of the ghostly adventure was received, brought home the intelligence that Ichabod Crane was still alive, that he had left the neighborhood partly through fear of the goblin and Hans van Ripper, and partly in mortification at having been suddenly dismissed by the heiress, that he had changed his quarters to a distant part of the country, had kept school and studied law at the same time, had been admitted to the bar, turned politician, electioneered, written for the newspapers, and finally had been made a justice of 10-pound court. Brom Bones, too, who, shortly after his rival's disappearance, conducted the blooming Katrina in triumph to the altar, was observed to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod was related. He always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin, which led to some suspect that he knew more about the matter than he chose to tell. The old country wives, however, who are best judges of these matters, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means, and it is a favorite story often told about the neighborhood around the winter evening fire. The bridge became more than ever an object of superstitious awe, and that may be the reason why the road has been altered of late years, so as to approach the church by the border of the mill pond. The schoolhouse, being deserted, soon fell to decay, and was reported to the haunted by the ghost of the unfortunate pedagogue and the ploughboy, loitering homeward of a still summer evening, has often fancied his voice at the distance, chanting a melancholy psalm tune among the tranquil solitudes of Sleepy Hollow. That's the end of the story. Oh, I appreciate you, Mama. Oh, my favorite gift that I've gotten so far? Um, well, I would say that it's kind of pretty hard to choose a favorite. I would say the shirt that my mama got me was pretty cool. I like my ghost shirt. Yeah, I don't get too many things for my birthday, y'all. And that's okay. I'm not very a material man. I like my things, but without them, I'm just the same man as I am with them. Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate that. Appreciate you guys being here to celebrate the ringing of my birthday in with me. It feels weird not to finish the entirety of this book, which it does have a postscript by the found in the handwriting of Mr. Knickerbocker. And he goes on to write, the preceding tale is given almost in the precise words in which I heard it related at the corporation meeting at the ancient city of Manhattan, at which were present many of its sagest and most illustrious burghers. The narrator The narrator was a pleasant, shabby, gentlemanly old fellow in pepper and salt clothes with a sadly humorous face, and one whom I strongly suspected of being poor. He made such efforts to be entertaining. When his story was concluded, there was much laughter and approbation, particularly from two or three deputy aldermen who had been asleep the greater part of the time. There was, however, one tall, dry-looking old gentleman with beetling eyebrows, who maintained a grave and rather severe face throughout. Now and then, folding his arms, inclining his head, and looking down upon the floor as if turning a doubt over in his mind. He was one of your wary men who never laughed but upon good grounds, when they had reason and law on their side. When the mirth of the rest of the company had subsided, the silence was restored. He leaned one arm on the elbow of his chair, and sticking the other akimbo, demanded, with a slight but exceedingly sage motion of his head and contraction of his brow, what was the moral of the story, and what it went on to prove. The storyteller, who was just putting a glass of wine to his lips as a refreshment after his toils, paused for a moment, looked at his inquirer with the air of an infinite difference, and, lowering the glass slowly to the table, observed that the story was intended most logically to prove that there is no situation in life but has its advantages and pleasures, provided we will but take a joke as we find it. That therefore he that runs races with goblin troopers is likely to have rough riding of it. Ergo, for a country schoolmaster to be refused the hand of a Dutch heiress is a certain step to high preferment in the state. The cautious old gentleman knit his brows tenfold closer after the explanation, being sorely puzzled by the ratiocination of syllogism, while methought that one in pepper and salt eyed him with something of a triumphant leer. At length he observed that with all this very well, but still he thought the story a little on the extravagant. There were one or two points in which he had his doubts. "Faith, sir," replied the storyteller, As to that matter, I don't believe one half of it myself. Boom. That was the whole book. The whole legend of Sleepy Hollow. And the odd but and strangely disappearance of Ichabod Crane. Thank you, Prince. I appreciate that. Scrolling up a little bit. Appreciate that. Kev, appreciate you being here. So thanks for sticking with me, y'all, 11 of you, while I went ahead and stammered through that. There were some awfully big words in there, words I haven't used in years and very seen written very much not at all. You're sweet, Mrs. 5150. I appreciate you. But I think we went on just a little longer than I thought we were going to be tonight. Shorter than I thought it'd be. Yeah, me too, honestly. In fact, when I opened it, it said 34 minutes to the end. I was like, we can do it. We can do it. And then if you think back to every Headless Horseman story that you've seen, whether it be animated in Disney or in live action, that's all they had to go on. That's what they created the whole story from. But let's be fair, Ichabod Crane and his, geeky, nerdy nature is pretty well represented within the cartoon and other forms of media and the story of Sleepy Hollow. Plus, let's not forget the most awesome portrayal of Ichabod Crane, which was played by Johnny Depp in Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. So if you want to take a 34-minute book and make it into a 2-hour movie, that's exactly how you do it. And bonus points if anybody remember who the Headless Horseman was in that movie. Y'all are sweet. I really do appreciate you being here with me, ringing in my birthday. Halloween, relax and read. Read a lot of poetry from Edgar Allan Poe to start, and then we did read through the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, we still have one more. Yeah, we still have one more Monday in October, so we are going to probably do another Halloween story in the next one, maybe a couple. So if you all have recommendations or if you have ideas of what we can read, go ahead and send them on through. I would like to find stories we can complete in one stream. I would really appreciate that so that we can start November with our Christmas Carol story. Christmas Carol. Yeah, Christmas Carol. Fell asleep on my couch while putting together new Givey 10s. No worries at all, Rafa. I really appreciate you, fam. Yeah, absolutely, Mama. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, Mama Ghost, says Mrs. 5150. But y'all are amazing. I think it's time I get me some of that dinner that y'all have been talking about. In November, yeah. So there's only one Monday left and it's a longer book, so I figured we'll give ourselves some time to get through it. I have to see how long it is, Mrs. 5150, and we'll go from there because we don't want to finish it too early, but sounds good, Mama. I appreciate that. Thank you for Kev, says Rafa. You're too sweet, Rafa. I appreciate that. I keep forgetting I can't redirect. So is there anybody still on right now? I mean, there's got to be, right? It's Sunday night. It's only like midnight. Who's still on? Let's go and spread some Pokey Ghost reading love. Oh, it's not Monday. It's Sunday. I forgot. My brain is telling me it's Monday because we just read. Come on. Come on. Everything needs to load a little quicker. That was awesome. Leighton just sat there listening. Oh, that is so great. I love that. I appreciate you listening, Leighton. And Katrina, I appreciate you being here as always. I'm getting old, yes. Pokey Diz. Jack is on? Pokey Jack? Oh, we gotta send some love her way if that's true. Jack is always supporting. Jay's Corner is on also. I haven't seen him on in quite some time. Oh wow, there it goes. It just clicked to man. There is 1,000,006 people on right now. That's too hard to choose. I should just be like, go to your subscription page and pick who you want to watch. Go there. But it looks like she's celebrating 2,000 subs. Let's go. Yeah, let's go raid PokeJack. Give her some love. Some PokeGhost love. He won't sit still for anyone. That makes my heart so happy. I appreciate you guys and love you dearly. I really hope that you have a beautiful rest of your night. Leighton, awesome job with your schoolwork. Keep on going. And I will see you guys tomorrow for my birthday stream. We are going to have such fun. My mail didn't show up today. I'm hoping it shows up before stream tomorrow would be great. What time tomorrow are you on? So I can and will be spam your happy. I appreciate that. I am going to be going on tomorrow. I believe it's going to be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to start really early tomorrow, and I am going until question mark. So just letting you know. Oh no, what? Looking forward to it. Oh no. I'll rest up for it. Appreciate that. Thank you for your stream. Happy birthday for tomorrow and see you then. Sounds great. Super stream tomorrow. Yes, sir. That is exactly it. We're going to be going long, long, long tomorrow, I'm sure. We've got things coming to build. Oh, yeah, that my mail didn't come. Yes, that is an oh no. I'm hoping that it gets here by tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll have very little to do. And somebody at Amazon will get a very nasty letter from the Pokey Ghost. So 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, Kev. I believe that's when I have it set for. It is already scheduled, so go hit those bells and buzzers, y'all, for that tomorrow. And yep, super appreciate you all. And as I mentioned, next week y'all should start be getting some mail yourself from me. So just let me know when that does arrive. And remember, everybody, to always go out and get everything that you set out to get. Don't let anything stop you. But it takes $0 to be a good person. So do it through peace, love, and Pokemon. And thank you all for believing in ghosts. Let's go raid PokeJack. Let's go PokeGhost raid. Congratulate her on 2,000 subs, y'all. Tomorrow, so it'll be late. No, no worries at all. No worries at all. No rush whatsoever. I appreciate you, Mrs. 5150 and Mr. Stafford. Ancient Mew, peace, love, and Pokemon to you as well, my friend. Let's go say hi to Jack, and you all have a beautiful rest of your night. And don't forget, always believe in ghosts.